Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dave Neal here, stand-up comedian and host of the SAP podcast. Today on Twitter, cancel culture is trending. I have a couple unique thoughts about cancel culture as a stand-up comedian, but also as just someone who's watching the country unravel as we're going through Trump's second impeachment. There's representatives arguing on the floor right now as I speak. And it's important for us to differentiate cancel culture from what's going on within the government and the people that were responsible for inciting violence on the U.S. Capitol just 1 week ago today. So when I think of cancel culture, I think of a group of people, usually on social media, that get together and want to sort of cancel a person, brand, or thing because they don't like what they stand for, something they said in the past, or something with those regards. It's the modern day equivalent of voting with your dollar. And a few examples of cancel culture, let's look at those versus what's happening right now. Representative Jim Jordan, he's on the floor right now, going viral on Twitter because he said, the cancel culture will come for all of us. He kind of had this brazen. He sounded like John Lithgow from Footloose, when when John Lithgow banned dancing in the Kevin Bacon vehicle Footloose. That's what kind of Jim Jordan is right now. And whenever someone's trying to sell you with fear, it's important to look at what they're actually saying. So is impeaching Trump for the second time cancel culture? Is going after the people that were involved in inciting a riot, domestic terrorism, insurgency, whatever you want to call it, is that cancel culture? Or do we just need to clean house from the toxic people that caused an uprising of sorts? So let's get right into it. First things first, the things that I think of when I think of cancel culture, first one I think of is Gilbert Gottfried. He was fired as the Aflac duck after a Japanese tsunami tweets. This is what cancel culture really is. He had some off-color tweets, and yes, he's a comedian who can make jokes about anything, and he's a very dirty comedian if you've ever seen Gilbert Gottfried live. Very funny, very dirty comedian. Nothing is too far with Gilbert Gottfried live on stage, but also he's paid a lot of money by a company, Aflac, an insurance company, to be a duck, to make voices, and he lost millions of dollars because of that. And he said, "I sincerely apologize to anyone who was offended by my attempt at humor regarding the tragedy in Japan. I meant no disrespect. My thoughts are with the victims and their families." And you know what? As a comedian, I think those actions were justified by an insurance company. He's just the voice of a duck. Okay, he wasn't supposed to be there, causing too much. And that's what happens when you're on a TV show, when you're bought by a corporation, that you can be canceled. And we see that happening. Justin Bieber, look how young Justin Bieber was. He was canceled, I say that in quotes, because he apologized and moved on. He was only a child. His mom was heard laughing in the background as he sang a song that used the N-word and the KKK. I mean, this is some heavy stuff, but also it's important, and this is what I'm going to be talking about in this video, to use critical thinking. Is this a fully developed human brain that's saying these things? Are we just going to destroy someone's life, or are we going to accept their apology and see what they do next as they move forward? That's different than what's happening with the president of the United States being impeached for a second time, getting banned from Twitter. I mean, we can respect the fact that there were plenty of warnings before these decisions were made. Or not. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that disagree. The song Let's Get It Started by the Black Eyed Peas was originally called Let's Get Retarded. This was the name of the song. I bet you didn't know that. It was called Let's Get Retarded. And, of course, we know that the use of the word retarded has not been accepted in modern use. But of course, if you grew up in New England like me, that was used every other sentence. It doesn't make it right, but we've moved past using that word as an acceptable word to describe things that it does not or should not be intended to describe. So it's important when using terms, to know the context of them and move forward, morally speaking, with the times. They use Let's Get Retarded, and then when it came to they re-released it as a single in 2004, I think for the NBA playoffs, and Let's Get It Started just sounded better, and they went with that. They were also getting a lot of hate from groups that didn't want them to say that word, of course, but it was also early 2000s. So, a lot of social media didn't exist to kind of gain traction and cancel songs. You just heard it on the radio. But I bet you didn't realize that Let's Get It Started was called Let's Get Retarded. So these are examples where cancel culture was used to progress conversation and move forward. So what's happening today is go down here. Representative Jim Jordan said it won't just be the president of the United States. The cancel culture will come for us all. And of course, this is where it gets a little dramatic. Let's play what he said here.
It needs to stop, because if it continues, it won't just be Republicans who get canceled. It won't just be the president of the United States. The cancel culture will come for us all.
Now, I'll be the first one to say that cancel culture can swing its pendulum too far. There are plenty of good people that were canceled, even with their apology. We've got Ken Jennings, the now a temporary host of Jeopardy. He was canceled, and I say canceled because he was shamed in 2018 or something like that for really just bad tweets. He was attempting jokes and humor, but come on, he's a Jeopardy winner. He's not a comic, so he was far off. It's like stay in your lane, you know what I mean? So he was canceled a couple of years ago, and then now that he was becoming the new temporary host of the of Jeopardy, he was canceled again, and he left the tweets up the first time to show that he had grown and he had changed and he had been different. But people will just continue to cancel you. The next generation will come along and just want to cancel you. Same thing happened to Kevin Hart, who apologized for like homophobic slurs or whatever he said, and then when he was to become host of the Oscars, they just drudged that back up. It's that's when the pendulum goes too far, when we do not accept an apology and we keep sort of prosecuting people for their past. But then again, there are times when cancel culture is appropriate. Bill Cosby, Weinstein, there are plenty of times when the public decides we will not support this person. There's plenty of people who don't support Roman Polanski and other directors and people in the entertainment because of their past and what they stand for. And you're allowed to vote with your dollar. You're allowed to not support people that you do not want to support. Absolutely. All right, moving forward. So what happened here is someone had quote tweeted that or whatever it's called, and they said Sarah said there were 5 dead bodies in the Capitol, including a police officer, thanks to Trump encouraging a violent insurrection among his fanatical base. And Jim Jordan's big concern is cancel culture. And Jim Jordan, of course, I'm going to talk about towards the end of this video, has his own canceling that has been in the works, where he's been complicit, allegedly, to some really bad things while he was coach, I believe, a wrestling coach at OSU. I'll talk about that in a minute because he needs to be very careful with his words as he's worried about cancel culture. If the people of his great state, I believe is Ohio, right, voted with their dollar, they might decide by doing their research that that's not somebody they want representing them. We'll have to see. Let's go forward here. Max said, if you ever think about how the people complaining about cancel culture tried to cancel the votes of 81,283,485 and 485 people. It's a very good point, and it's one where, look, if you're still believing that the election was rigged, I don't know what to tell you. There's been plenty of investigations and recounts, Georgia 3 times. There might have been a vote here or there that wasn't legal. There might have been instances of fraud, but not to affect millions of people in the final outcome of the vote. This was obviously stoked on by Trump. Look, Trump said before the 2016 election that it was rigged. So he said it was going to be rigged all along. He sort of prepared himself for losing. And now when it actually happened, of course, it's like, hey, I've been saying it all along. Sam Harris said one can be strongly against cancel culture and still support the cancellation of dangerous psychopaths. And look, this had a lot of pushback, and it's like a slippery slope of how do you measure what a psychopath is. It's one of those things. I don't like the term cancel culture. I think public shaming can be good in certain instances when it's deserved, but I think there needs to be a way to redeem yourself. And I think collectively as a society, we need to embrace people that redeemed themselves for behaviors that might be unbecoming to their standard as a public speaker or of influence. And we need to embrace them moving forward, living their life, and still being able to keep their platform if the thing they were canceled for wasn't something that was a crime of sorts, or, you know, it's obviously involves critical thinking because every situation is different. The Associated Press said, Eric Trump tells Associated Press that hits to his family's business empire since the deadly U.S. Capitol riots are part of a liberal cancel culture. The backlash includes the PGA canceling its golf tournament at the president's New Jersey course. Now, this is where it becomes interesting because, look, people have been canceling Trump for a long time. This is not a new thing. There's an article here that's every Trump property that's dropped his name. They've been dropping his name for a long time, since his first impeachment. There's plenty of skating rinks, this Trump Soho Hotel, because a lot of Trump properties are just like they're like franchises in a way. You can correct me, I'm sure I'm wrong here, but Trump doesn't necessarily own them. They just bought the rights to have the Trump name, because back in the day, like, oh, Trump Soho, that was a good name. And in today's world, socialites and people that are they don't want to be associated with him. Everyone wants to distance themselves from him. The Soho, Toronto, and Panama hotels are no longer doing business with Trump. Deutsche Bank just announced yesterday that they're cutting ties with Trump, and Trump owes them $300 million in the coming years. And part of Trump's plans as a businessman is to always leverage his debt with new investments. He's kind of got a too big to fail thing going on, where banks will continue to give him money because he owes them so much. So it's kind of, I don't want to call it a Ponzi scheme, but it's kind of like a thing where once the money stops flowing in, Trump's going to have to pay that money back. So cancel culture, if you're worried about Trump being canceled, Deutsche Bank or all these other banks, they have a right to not want to do business with people. That's their right, and it's unfortunately, by a lot of people, they call this a First Amendment right. And freedom of speech does not exist in the private sector, and we have a country that values capitalism. And if you have a company like, I believe it's Smith Schuster, decides they don't want to support Josh Hawley, and please correct me on these names. Let me look this up right now. Josh Hawley book deal canceled. They have the right to cancel a book deal. It's just not worth it for them. Josh Hawley's book was canceled by Simon & Schuster this week, 2 days ago. So like companies have to decide what's best for their economics. A company like Aflac decides, look, we don't need Gilbert Gottfried to be the voice of our duck when we've got him, as a liability. So companies are allowed to cancel. Obviously, this makes common sense to me. Here on Vox, it says Josh Hawley's book deal cancellation comes after a year of social debates in publishing. The big 5 book publishers embracing the right wing. Now they're starting to back away. It's like, look, they've decided that they want to separate themselves from people that are operating sort of in a fanatical way that they see, and they have the right to, and you have the right, Josh Hawley, to publish your book with a different book publisher or do it yourself. You have these rights. All right, so let's move forward here. J. Escobedo Shepard said the cancel culture only allows one side to talk, says Jim Jordan while talking. This is very interesting. Jim Jordan's complaining about cancel culture as he's on the floor talking openly and debating. So the thought of people saying, oh, we just want to debate, the debate's out there. It's been raging on for years. Everyone has a voice, especially representatives. They're literally speaking for their constituents, and everyone's able to have this talk. It doesn't mean that companies like Twitter need to host you if you violated their terms of service. Now, of course, companies like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, I think today decided that they were going to be shutting down or limiting Trump's YouTube channel. They have the right to do that. And if we want to break up big social media companies, that's a whole nother conversation that needs to happen. But we can't be mad at First Amendment when this is not a First Amendment issue. So here's what happened. Let's get into Jim Jordan. He's in a congressional antitrust hearing on July 29th. Republican Rep. Jim Jordan of Ohio had a specific question for Apple CEO Tim Cook. Mr. Cook, is the cancel culture mob dangerous? Cancel culture, which President Donald Trump last month called the very definition of totalitarianism, describes the phenomenon of frequent public pile-ons criticizing a person, business, movement, or idea. The phrase, a surprisingly recent creation, has become ubiquitous in pop culture and reached the highest halls of power used to describe cancellations large and small. So Jim Jordan's kind of been railing on cancel culture for a long time, and I understand for some reason there's this ability that we're like I said about the pendulum swinging too far. There is a sort of radical belief by far left that we should be censoring certain people's beliefs and thoughts, and that shouldn't be the case. We should let everyone lay out what they think and believe. It's better to know your enemy right in front of you than have them in some society, the creation of Parler, because people, they wanted a safe place to share their thoughts and opinions. Think of it what you might, and that exists because of people not wanting to be canceled, so they take their ideas somewhere else. I don't think that's good for society. I think it should all be on an open platform. Obviously, that doesn't mean we should be threatening people or intimidating them in any sort of way. I think the terms of service should be clear with limiting hate speech and, of course, all those different things that exist. So what happened with Jim Jordan? 6 former wrestlers say Rep. Jim Jordan knew about abusive OSU doctor. So there's a doctor. He committed suicide in 2005, but for decades he was accused by hundreds of people of sexual offenses in the doctor's office, and this all came to light just in the last couple of years. Tito Vasquez says he still remembers the day 3 decades ago when, as a wrestler at Ohio State University, the doctor he'd gone to see about a bloody nose insisted on examining his genitals. He also recalls how one of his coaches dismissed his immediate complaint. "I have nothing to do with this," Vasquez quoted the assistant coach saying as he effectively ended the conversation and went on with wrestling practice. That coach was Jim Jordan, now an Ohio congressman and an influential voice in Republican politics, perhaps best known for his pugnacious defense of President Donald Trump during the recent impeachment proceedings. This was impeachment number 1. Now we're on to number 2. Donald Trump has that record too. 2 impeachments, if it goes through. We'll have to see. By the time you watch this video, it might have. Vasquez is one of 6 former OSU wrestlers who told CNN in recent interviews that they were present when Jordan heard or responded to sexual allegations. So Jim Jordan denied all this. He also spent $85,000 with his company's campaign finance money to get a PR company to sort of get his message across that he had nothing to do with this. 6-on-1, guys. This is something that should be looked at further. Jim Jordan's accused them basically of only coming out once there was money involved in a lawsuit. I'm pretty sure they don't have to implicate Jim Jordan's in order to receive money from OSU. What Jordan and other coaches knew, and when they knew it, had been under scrutiny since 2018 when OSU announced an investigation into the allegations against Strauss. Strauss was the doctor. The commission by the university concluded last year that Strauss sexually abused at least 177 male student patients between 79 and 98. The doctor died by suicide in 2005. It's a real horrible story, folks. And I hate to even use this as an example, but here we have Jim Jordan wondering if cancel culture is going to come for everyone. And there are credible witnesses that have all said firsthand account that Jim Jordan was complicit and knew all about this and did nothing to stop it. Read all the info. I'll put a link in the description. It's like, you know what? Oh, we don't like CNN. Okay, I understand. I completely understand. So we look at other places. We look at, Fox News here. They have the same exact story. Former Ohio State wrestler says Rep. Jordan asked him to deny abuse allegations. Adam DiSabato, a former captain of the Ohio State wrestling team who was on the squad from 88 to 93, 5 years, good for him, testified to Ohio's legislator Tuesday that Rep. Jim Jordan's representative of Ohio asked him to deny 2018 allegations by his brother Mike DiSabato that Jordan knew about the sexual abuse of male wrestlers while he was a coach at the university. Oh yeah, let's get rid of cancel culture. Let's get rid of it. It's going to come for all of us. Only if you're complicit in crimes, I think you should worry about it. Jordan, a former assistant wrestling coach, has denied multiple times knowing about any sexual abuse while he was at Ohio State. DiSabato's comments came as the state's House Civil Justice Committee was considering legislation to allow victims to sue Ohio State for sexual abuse by a doctor who was employed there for 20 years. Ohio State is too arrogant, DiSabato said. They think it's going to go away. Jim Jordan called me crying, groveling on the 4th of July, begging me to go against my brother, begging me, crying for a half hour. That's the kind of cover-up that's going on there. Cancel culture, folks. Cancel culture, right? We should get rid of it. Just a flash in the pan. The way it used to work, before Jim Jordan's was a rep and with social media, the way it used to work is you'd pay money to victims and it would go under the rug. That's why you wonder, well, how come no one reported Harvey Weinstein? Because collectively you didn't think you could defeat the beast. Now we see, Donald Trump, President Trump for another week. You see him basically losing a game of Jenga, trying to put all the pieces back and say, I didn't lose the game of Jenga. It's like when I used to play dodgeball in high school and you'd see the guy kind of try to move out of the dodgeball and the dodgeball clearly hit his shirt and he just keeps on playing. And it's like, Joe, I saw you just lost. You're out of the game. And everyone's like, we didn't see it. And then the guy, he's like, I didn't get hit. And it's like, we all just watched it. That's what's happening right now. It's like my jaws agape wondering, are we not watching the same thing? Well, here's Fox News reporting on it if you think CNN's biased. And then you go, wow, Fox News is in on it too. We don't like them. Well, let's go to OAN News. I searched Jim Jordan, OSU. Sorry, but nothing matched your search term. So I guess OAN News Network, OANN, and how many N's are in that? Doesn't want to report on it. It doesn't fit their agenda. Kyle Griffin on Twitter said a Stop the Steal organizer said 3 Republican lawmakers helped plan his D.C. rally. Reps Andy Biggs, Mo Brooks, and Paul Gosar, all hardline Trump supporters. So this is an ongoing story and part of the cancel culture movement where Jim Jordan, I think a lot of what he's talking about is let's not cancel everyone who is involved. where we know right now, and this is still ongoing, that Rep. Andy Biggs back in December had helped organize the Stop the Steal event that happened on Wednesday, the deadly event that led to 5 deaths of Americans. So the question is, how far are we going to cancel, and I hate to use that term in this scenario, prosecute people that were involved in this, do we call it a massacre? Domestic terrorist event? What do we want to call this? It's still, we're still sort of going through the rubble, literally, of what happened. So are we in a cult here? Is this a cult? How do you know if you're in a cult? If you refuse to do your info, you do your research to figure out what's going on. Any commenters, are you in the cult? Are you able to critically think? Aside from just telling me, you didn't do the research, Google it. How do you know if you're in a cult? Number one thing, opposing critical thinking. Look, do your own research. Everyone should do their own research, but do a multiple, look at who's providing, if you're just reading a news website that has a bald eagle chugging a Keystone Light, that's not the research. And we all have family members that send us things that have like URLs that are like hyphenated adjectives. And it's like, send me a credible news source. I prefer The Hill. It's a progressive news site that's left-leaning, but has both, I wouldn't even call it left-leaning. The hosts, Sagar and Crystal, she's a left progressive and he's a right progressive, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure I'm messing it up. Point is you got to do your research, folks. You got to look into these things. And don't just say, wow, that guy represents me, so my team's the Red Sox and I can't vote for the Yankees. We're all Americans here, and we need to differentiate between patriotism and nationalism and the identity of, like, I'm with the Republicans or I'm with the Democrats. There's something very wrong that's happening within our country right now, and I think we need to really try our best to educate ourselves on what side we want to be on when we look back on this whole mess. Reminds me of the whole Colin Kaepernick protest where he took a knee and everyone said, taking a knee is desecrating the American flag. And then here we have, just 1 week ago, Trump 2020, no more bullshit. And if you look closely, that's the statue of Gerald Ford. There we go. Josh Howley's book deal. I already went through that one. So yeah, that's it, folks. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Obviously, cancel culture is nuanced. Every story's different. Jim Jordan worrying about a siege on the nation's capital should not be compared to Gilbert Gottfried being fired by Aflac Insurance. We have to critically think about what's happening and what side we want to be on when we look back on this. Do we just want to be safe and complicit in our group think, or do we want to kind of expand our mind and wonder, where we stand? And I encourage everyone to do your own research and think about it. Well, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for watching this video. As Representative Jim Jordan said, cancel culture will come for all of us. In the meantime, if you want to see more of my content, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. I appreciate and respond to all comments, unless there's too many. If you agree or disagree with me, I can critically think and I can appreciate your objection or your praise. I'll take either one. See you next time. Bye, everybody.